22nd, 2023, and the time is 8:33. A quorum is present, and the General Counsel will record each committee member who is in attendance. If you'd like to speak during public comment, please sign at the entrance of the meeting room. Do we have anybody here that wants to make a comment from the public? I don't see anybody, do we, Leah? No. Okay, that's easy. Okay, the next item is to approve minutes from our last meeting. You all had a chance to review them? We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Okay. Item 6, fiber broadband business plan update. Hey, good morning, Ken. How are you doing, buddy? Good morning. You survived the summer? Pardon me? You've survived the summer so far? So far. All right. Good. And welcome everyone here. Good to see everybody again. You got a whole crowd of people here. This is a big update. Go ahead.
Yeah, so we want to bring to you today an update on our fiber business. I think it's we've had discussing before was of interest. We have Jason Urban, who's the VP of Telecom, and Eric Anderson is our VP of Business Development for Telecom. We split this presentation into an open session and executive session. The executive session is there. It contains legal advice and critical infrastructure. So we're going to tackle this.
I first want to provide some context and describe our enabling legislation, and talk a little bit about our business model and the value that LCRA offers, and the profile, the types of organizations that we serve. And you'll notice in this image here, there's a wire across the top. That is the ground wire for our transmission system, and in that wire is where our fiber optics rest. They travel, all the signals travel along those lines. So if you're wondering where our fiber is, it's in the sky.
Okay.
The enabling legislation came 2 years ago in the 87th legislature, and we have our own fiber broadband network that we operate and use for our power generation business, for our transmission business, for our water business. And the Texas legislature authorized LCRA to use our excess capacity in that network to help bridge the digital divide in Texas. And so the three key points in that legislation from 2021, it authorizes LCRA to be a middle mile provider, and I'll talk a little bit more about what the middle mile means. But we're a middle mile provider now that by law, and we can connect the middle mile to the last mile, and that we can we cannot be a last mile provider. So we are only that connection between the rural communities we serve and the greater internet. Now this slide has a lot going on, but it talks about our business and how it all works. And there's really, I'm going to go top to bottom on this slide, and it's really about the customers that we serve, the value that we offer those customers, and how we deliver that value. And so you'll notice across the top, there's the last mile providers. Those are the ones that serve communities in Texas with different kinds of internet services. We are the middle mile, so we're connecting that last mile provider, typically at a substation, back to the internet. And those are typically today we're in San Antonio and in Austin, where you make connections back to the internet. So from these data centers that are all part of the internet backbone, you can move traffic backwards and forwards from rural communities. So the 5 kinds of customers we have here in the upper left are wireless internet service providers, wired, which is typically like one that goes pole to pole, house to house, business to business, data centers, and then we have also some utility-oriented clients for broadband, so solar and wind farms, as well as fellow utilities in the region. So these are all folks that we serve, so that's our customer base. What we get paid for is the middle mile service, which is typically lit fiber, so that's 1, 10, or 100 gigabits per second. And so that is the transmission of information to and from an organization, to, a customer, a last mile customer, whether it's a hospital, a business, a home, a city hall. And so we're moving that traffic from a rural area back to the backbone. And to put that in perspective, at your home, you might have 200 megabits per second service, or so we can handle many, many, many customers with 100 gigabit service. And we also offer a service called multi-protocol label switching, which is just a technical word for service that's more oriented toward utilities. And in the next section under infrastructure, we are using investments to, we're leveraging the current investments, but also we're taking some additional funds to develop three things, and that's the physical connections to the last mile ISPs. We need property easements, which you've been involved with typically every board meeting, and we also have networking gear that we need to move the bits around from the rural areas back to the data centers. And then we're leveraging that existing network of LCRA substations and our fiber network. And then all this is, our foundation, our guiding principles are really the LCRA mission and values, Board Policy 220, and of course the legislation from 632 that I spoke of. So that's really the framework of how we create value, the customers we serve, and how we deliver that value. I'm going to dig in a little bit on the three things that we're using money for to help seed this business. So we got some seed capital 2 years ago when this business began, and we're using that money to cure easements, which are typically on a board agenda, and we're getting the access to move third-party bits or third-party data, third-party internet traffic across our transmission lines, across that wire that's on the top of that transmission structure. We're also building a physical access point where our middle mile comes in, lands in a substation. We have to get outside the fence safely and securely to serve a local internet service provider. So we have to create some way to connect physically and meet a local internet service provider in that community. And it might be a big town or it might be a small town. And then, of course, we need to have the networking gear and the cybersecurity in place to make sure that all this traffic gets moved properly and safely and securely. And so we might have some edge devices in these things. And I want to recognize the teamwork that we've had from our real estate team, our legal team, our cybersecurity team, construction, and all the folks in telecom. It's just been a great team effort to deliver all of these things to make, because you have to have all of them to make this business work. And so I'm grateful to those teams.
And I would add on the access points outside substations. So when I got involved in telecom, I didn't realize it's actually such a big deal. It's fairly expensive. So as Eric said, the fiber comes in inside the substation because it's hooked up to the static wires, and we put all the towers up and you dead end it and stuff like that. So you got to get the fiber. Part of that goes to the transmission relay house and all the communications that we need, and the rest of it needs to be accessed by the third party. So typically what we do is we have to go underground and take that fiber underground and pop it up right on the fence line with a little house or a small enclosure so that we can get to it, and whoever third party we sell it to, they can get to it too, because they'll need internet as well, in the little area as well. So it sounds simple, but you've got to dig through a bunch of underground cables in the substation. You've got to make sure you don't hit the grounding net, and you've got to be able to not have third-party people in the substation. So it's not cheap, and we got to do it based on every spot. So like I said, when I first got into it, it's like, well, that's easy. Just put it out there. It's like, that's right, but it takes a lot to put it out there. So just a little bit broader info on that.
Thank you, Ken. Appreciate that. The next slide, we'll talk a little bit about our values. So why would an internet service provider want to work with us? And there are three reasons. We're available, we're reliable, and we're affordable. And that's our promise to those last mile providers that we serve. And by available, I mean that we reach some places that a lot of internet middle mile providers do not reach. So we're in a lot of small towns and a lot of rural areas that are typically unserved or underserved. We also have a lot of capacity. We have about 200 terabits per second of edge capacity, and that means that, let's put that in perspective. So if you were watching a class online, like a Texas A&M AgriLife extension course, and you were watching that course online, you would be able to have 20 million Texans watching that course.
Good man.
So there's a lot of folks that can take advantage of the capacity. And different internet applications have different speed needs, right? Video conferencing versus filling out a job application, right? Those are different needs, but we have a lot of capacity. And then we're there 24/7, and that matters because things go down, things don't always work, and we're there to solve it and make it right. So that reliability is critical, and the uptime that we have. And we have great feedback already from internet service providers thanking us for troubleshooting things that come up either on their end or because of the weather or something like that. And then lastly, we're affordable. So as this is a mission, this is part of our community service that we provide. And so we are here to, be a financially stable servant of broadband, middle mile broadband to the communities that we serve. So we price fairly, we treat customers fairly, and I think it's helping us grow this business. So in the next slide, I'll talk quickly about the different customer segments, and then we'll wrap up the open session. So there's really 5 kinds of customers that we're serving today. And you might know some of these from where you live. So wireless ISPs are typically a tower that you might see in a rural area, in a ranch land, and you might be able to get service either on licensed or unlicensed frequencies to your home or your ranch. And we serve a lot of those folks today in some of the rural areas. The other kinds of wireless ISPs are your classic cell phone companies, AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile. So we're also providing fiber that gets out to those towers so that when you drive or you want to use your Google Maps and you're in a rural area, it's going to work. And then we also have wired ISPs, and we're excited to be working with some of the electric cooperatives in the region to deliver. They're offering both power and broadband, some of them, as well as some of the rural telephone co-ops and classic fiber internet service providers, as well as some cable folks who are doing, voice, TV, and internet for different communities. So those are some examples of 2 of the 5 customer segments. And then more and more, we're seeing data centers come up. Their data centers are being built in Central Texas because you want to have things closer to where the consumers are. So you might have an Amazon Web Services, a Microsoft, and Netflix. There's many different examples where these data centers both deliver traffic and create high bandwidth connections to other part of the internet. So you can quickly stream that movie or you can quickly get to that application, that business application that you're running. And then lastly, we have customers that we're serving are some of the utilities to help monitor their networks, typically their distribution networks, and then also some solar and wind farms that need, you need to have to talk to those assets, and so it's helpful to use our system for that. So, and again, we're reaching some faraway places. So my request today is, we're 2 years in. Help us spread the word. Help us make connections in your communities. If there are internet service providers who don't know about LCRA's middle mile service, I want to know. We're trying hard to get the word out, and pleased to be involved in this journey, and happy to take any questions.
So when you say help get the word out, for example, so I know we're the middle mile provider. So, for example, down where we're at in El Campo, we have YK Communications that's really going at it. Are we working with them, or is there, or how does that? Tell me how that looks, or what I say to my friends that own that.
Yeah, well, we don't have. We haven't reached El Campo yet in our network, so we will.
Number one, so they know you're not working with them.
That's the first test. Is
what the heck? What's going on?
I think what we could do
on the way.
for that is we will go through a map to show y'all where we have the connectivity right now,
Okay.
and we have all that all ready to go, and we'll show you where the current footprint is, and we have a map that shows the next 2 years and the next 4 years.
Okay.
So we can share that with y'all. We'll do an email. Eric will write it up and say these are the communities we could already kind of go into, and this is the planning community, and this is the future. And then y'all can look at that and then help us get the word out that way. In addition to the contacts, they're doing a tremendous job of where we have the opportunity today, and we're going to have the opportunity the next 2 to 4 years.
Yeah, if we had a list of who you're looking to.
Yeah, we'll
to
get
work
all that.
with,
We'll get the cities and the
easy way
counties
to
and kind of.
through all of our
Right.
different folks we know.
Rich, we'll show you the footprint of what we've got, and then the plan of where we're trying to go.
Very
And he's
good.
got a great map of that I think maybe
It's
have
in
here.
the,
When we go into
executive
executive session, we'll show you all that map,
Sure.
and then we'll send you a hard copy or electronic copy as well.
You mentioned that aerial fiber is more reliable than right-of-way, which I assume is buried fiber. But I would have thought the reverse. I would have thought lightning and that kind of stuff be a hazard, but
It depends on, I mean, we believe in our fiber and the reliability of it, but there are cases where folks dig fence posts.
oh, I got you.
Department of Transportation
Guys like
widens
me
a
show
road.
up with a backhoe.
Yeah,
So underground is reliable. I don't want to discredit underground fiber. But it is also subject to the whims of life.
Got you.
Accessibility is probably the biggest thing for us. So when you know you have a break or a point, you don't have to dig something up to it. We can just get on the bucket truck or whatever we're working on and go fix it.
Yeah.
So does the cut fiber and those right-of-ways you're talking about, does that reduce the reliability once it's repaired?
no, it doesn't.
Okay.
We can go in and fuse the glass back together.
But there might be an outage for some period of time, right?
Any other questions before we go into executive session with?
Well, I was just going to say there could be an issue with dove hunting, we're talking about digging down. Also have, certain members of the board.
You're not supposed to shoot them off the line,
Shoot
Timmerman.
off a line.
Shooting birds off lines, I don't know,
does
things
happen.
like that, yeah.
So actually, we're really good with that because typically the transmission line is high enough that the buckshot really doesn't bother it.
We're not talking about. we're
Now, a
talking
rifle
high-powered
will
rifle.
have a damage. I didn't say that, but
Yeah, well. We're gonna have a little dove hunting demonstration outside of
yeah.
town in a couple
next
weeks.
week.
Huh? Good. Any other questions from the board before we convene an executive session? Thank you very much, guys. Well, okay. The committee will now go into executive session pursuant to sections 551.071, 551.072, 551.074, 551.076, 551.086, 551.089, and 418.183F of the Texas Government Code. Today is Tuesday, August 22nd, 2023, and the time is 8:51. Concluded the executive session of Planning and Public Policy Committee meeting and now return to session, open session. Today is Tuesday, August 22nd, 2023, and the time is 10:26. Are there any other items to come forward to the meeting today? Hearing none. This meeting is adjourned at 10:26. Thank you, everyone.